When 4 Air Force pilots crashed deep in the Alaskan wilderness, the Pentagon deployed every available resource: helicopters, search teams, satellite surveillance. Everything failed. Then someone remembered the crazy old bush pilot who used to be Special Forces. "Get me Wolf Anderson," the colonel ordered. "If anyone can bring them home alive, it's him." Robert Wolf Anderson, 66 years old, stands 6 feet 2 inches with steel gray hair and a beard that's weathered by 40 years of Alaskan winters. His hands are scarred from decades of working on aircraft engines in sub-zero temperatures, and his blue eyes carry the steady gaze of someone who's seen the worst nature can offer and survived it all. Wolf lives in a cabin he built himself, 50 miles outside Fairbanks, Alaska. No neighbors for miles, no cell phone reception, just him and the wilderness that most people consider uninhabitable. Every morning at 0500, he checks weather conditions, inspects his 1974 Cessna 180, and plans his day around the kind of flying that makes other pilots shake their heads in disbelief. The walls of his cabin are covered with topographical maps marked in red ink. Every mountain, every valley, every landing strip within 500 miles. Weather patterns he's tracked for decades. Survival caches he's established throughout the wilderness. Information that can't be found in any government database because it exists only in Wolf Anderson's memory. What the aviation authorities don't know is that Wolf Anderson isn't just a bush pilot. He's a former Green Beret Master Sergeant who spent 20 years conducting operations in the world's most hostile environments. Arctic warfare specialist. Survival instructor. The man who trained other Special Forces operators how to stay alive when staying alive should be impossible. His official record shows Robert Anderson, commercial pilot license suspended due to age-related safety concerns. His real record shows 847 successful rescues in conditions that grounded every other aircraft in Alaska. Tuesday, 1,400 hours. Elmendorf Air Force Base, Alaska. Colonel Patricia Stone receives the emergency call that every military commander dreads. "Mayday, Mayday, this is Falcon 4. We have total engine failure." Going down approximately 200 miles north of the Arctic Circle. For souls on board, the aircraft, AC-130 Hercules transport carrying critical military supplies to forward operating bases. The crew, 4 experienced Air Force pilots, ages 24 to 35, all highly trained but none with Arctic survival experience. Colonel Stone immediately mobilizes every available resource. 3 rescue helicopters, 2 fixed-wing search aircraft, a ground team with snowmobiles, and satellite surveillance. The most sophisticated search and rescue operation in Alaska's history. But nature doesn't care about technology. The weather report is catastrophic. Sustained winds 80 miles per hour, temperature minus 47 degrees Fahrenheit with wind chill pushing minus 70 degrees Fahrenheit, zero visibility and blowing snow. Conditions that ground helicopters, disabled GPS systems, and turn search operations into suicide missions. After 24 hours, all military rescue attempts have failed. The helicopters can't fly in the wind. The search planes can't see through the snow. The ground teams can't reach the crash site before running out of fuel and becoming victims themselves. Colonel Stone faces the terrible reality. 4 American airmen are going to die in the Arctic wilderness because modern military technology isn't designed for the worst that Alaska can offer. Wednesday, 0800 hours. Major Sarah Kim, Rescue Operations Coordinator, sits in her office staring at weather reports that haven't improved in 36 hours. 4 pilots are dying in conditions that have defeated every resource the United States Air Force can deploy. That's when Senior Master Sergeant Mike Thompson knocks on her door. "Ma'am, I have an idea. It's unconventional." "Sergeant, at this point I'll listen to anything." "There's a bush pilot, retired Special Forces, guy named Wolf Anderson. He flies in weather that grounds everyone else. Local legend says he can land anywhere, anytime, in any conditions." Major Kim pulls up Anderson's file on her computer. Robert Anderson, age 66, commercial license suspended. "Sergeant, this man isn't even legally authorized to fly." "Ma'am, with respect, those 4 pilots aren't going to care about paperwork if he can reach them." Major Kim studies the file more carefully. Former Green Beret Master Sergeant, Arctic warfare specialist, 20 years of Special Forces operations in extreme environments. 847 documented rescues as a civilian bush pilot. Where do we find him? That's the problem, ma'am. He lives off-grid. No phone, no radio contact. Someone would have to drive out to his cabin. Major Kim looks at the weather reports again. Another 24 hours, and hypothermia will kill the downed pilots regardless of injuries. Modern military technology has failed. Time to try something old school. Sergeant Thompson, take a vehicle and find Wolf Anderson. Tell him the United States Air Force needs his help. Wednesday, 1,100 hours. Sergeant Thompson's military vehicle struggles through snow-covered back roads toward Wolf Anderson's cabin. GPS stops working 20 miles from the main highway. Cell phone service disappeared 30 miles ago. He's navigating by paper maps and local landmarks the way people did before satellites. Wolf's cabin sits in a clearing surrounded by spruce trees, smoke rising from the chimney, his Cessna 180 parked on a frozen lake that serves as his private airstrip. Thompson knocks on the door, wondering if this is the worst idea in military history. Wolf answers the door in thermal underwear and wool socks, coffee cup in hand. You're lost, soldier. Sir, I'm looking for Robert Anderson. Wolf Anderson. Found him. What do you want? Thompson explains the situation. 4 Air Force pilots down in the Arctic. All military rescue attempts failed, conditions too severe for conventional operations. Wolf listens without interrupting, his blue eyes studying the weather through his window. How long have they been down? 36 hours, sir. Injuries? Unknown. Last radio contact reported engine failure, but no other details. Wolf sets down his coffee cup. What's the Air Force offering? Sir. Son, I'm 66 years old with a suspended license. The Air Force wants me to fly into a blizzard to save 4 pilots their own rescue teams can't reach. What's in it for me? Thompson hesitates. Sir, I was told to tell you that 4 American servicemen need help. Wolf stares at him for 10 seconds. That's all you needed to say. Give me 30 minutes to prep the aircraft. Wolf's preparation ritual is methodical, precise, and unlike anything Sergeant Thompson has ever seen. This isn't a bush pilot getting ready for a flight. This is a Special Forces operator preparing for a mission behind enemy lines. Wolf opens a storage shed that contains enough survival equipment to supply an Arctic expedition. Cold weather gear rated for -80 degrees Fahrenheit, medical supplies, emergency rations, Arctic camping equipment, and gear that Thompson doesn't recognize but looks military. Sergeant, help me load the aircraft. Everything we take has to serve multiple purposes. Weight matters in these conditions. Wolf explains as they work. Arctic rescue isn't about heroics. It's about preparation, knowledge, and understanding that nature doesn't negotiate. You plan for the worst possible scenario, then you plan for worse than that. The Cessna 180 looks ancient compared to modern military aircraft, but Wolf has modified it extensively. Enlarged fuel tanks for extended range. Specialized avionics that work in magnetic interference. Landing gear designed for rough terrain. Most importantly, an aircraft light enough to fly in conditions that ground heavier planes. Sir, can this plane really handle the weather out there? Wolf checks the engine oil temperature. Sergeant, this aircraft has flown in weather that would terrify a helicopter pilot. The question isn't whether it can handle the conditions. The question is whether I still can. Sir, I'm 66 years old. My reflexes aren't what they were when I was your age. But experience compensates for a lot. Sometimes you need old instincts more than young muscles. Wednesday, 1,330 hours. Wolf files a flight plan that makes Sergeant Thompson nervous. Direct route to the crash site, flying at low altitude through weather that has grounded every other aircraft in Alaska. Sir, shouldn't we wait for conditions to improve? Wolf studies satellite weather imagery. Sergeant, this storm system is going to last another 48 hours. Those pilots don't have 48 hours. In Arctic conditions, hypothermia kills in stages. Stage 1 is shivering and confusion. Stage 2 is loss of fine motor control. Stage 3 is unconsciousness and death. What stage are they in now? Based on the timeline and temperatures, probably stage 2. We have maybe 12 hours before they reach stage 3. Wolf starts the engine. The Cessna's propeller cuts through blowing snow as they taxi across the frozen lake. Thompson watches Wolf's pre-flight procedures with growing respect. This isn't reckless flying. This is precision aviation by someone who understands exactly what he's doing. Sergeant, during this flight, I need you to understand something. We're not just rescuing 4 pilots. We're conducting a special forces operation in hostile territory. The enemy isn't human, it's the environment. But the principles are the same: intelligence, planning, execution, extraction. The Cessna lifts off into weather that would challenge a modern military transport. Wolf flies by instruments and instinct, navigating through conditions that reduce visibility to zero and create turbulence that rattles every bolt in the aircraft. Sir, how do you navigate when GPS doesn't work? Wolf points to a collection of analog instruments: dead reckoning, magnetic compass, visual landmarks when possible. Same techniques pilots used for 50 years before satellites. Sometimes the old ways work better than the new ways. Flying north through the storm, Wolf demonstrates why 847 successful rescues isn't luck. It's skill developed over decades. He reads weather patterns that satellites miss, identifies terrain features through snow that search aircraft can't see, and navigates using knowledge that exists only in the minds of people who've survived the Arctic for decades. There, Wolf points through the windscreen. Wreckage at 2 o'clock. Thompson squints through the snow. Sir, I don't see anything. Metal reflects light differently than snow, even in a blizzard. Look for straight lines. Nature doesn't make straight lines. Thompson finally sees it. Pieces of aircraft scattered across a valley, the main fuselage intact but partially buried in snow. No signs of life visible from the air. Wolf circles the crash site, analyzing landing options. We've got 3 problems. 1. The terrain is too rough for a conventional landing. 2. The wind is gusting from multiple directions. 3. If I land, I need to be sure I can take off again with extra passengers. Sir, what are our options? Wolf points to a ridgeline 500 yards from the crash. There's a flat section that might work as a landing strip. I can put the aircraft down, but it's going to be a rough approach. How rough? The kind of landing that violates every safety regulation the FAA ever wrote. Wolf's approach to the improvised landing strip demonstrates why Special Forces operators are trained for impossible missions. He flies the Cessna through wind gusts that would overwhelm most pilots, using thermal updrafts and terrain features to maintain control in conditions that should make flying impossible. The landing is controlled violence. The aircraft hits the snow-covered ground hard, bounces twice, and slides 200 yards before coming to a stop. Thompson's heart is pounding, but Wolf is already shutting down the engine and grabbing survival gear. Sergeant, welcome to the Arctic. From this point forward, everything we do is about staying alive long enough to complete the mission. The temperature outside is minus 52 degrees Fahrenheit with wind chill approaching minus 80 degrees Fahrenheit. Exposed skin freezes in less than 2 minutes. Breathing the air feels like inhaling knives. This is environment that kills unprepared humans in less than an hour. Wolf moves with the efficiency of someone who's operated in these conditions for decades. Arctic clothing, survival equipment, medical supplies. Everything organized for maximum effectiveness in minimum time. Sir, how do we reach the crash site? Wolf points across the valley. We walk 500 yards through snow that's waist deep and wind that will try to knock us down. Keep your face covered, breathe through your nose, and stay behind me. If you lose sight of me, you'll die. The trek to the crash site tests Thompson's understanding of human endurance. Each step through deep snow requires enormous effort. The wind creates whiteout conditions that eliminate visibility beyond 10 feet. The cold penetrates through multiple layers of Arctic clothing. Wolf moves like a ghost through conditions that should be unsurvivable, following terrain features and wind patterns to navigate toward the wreckage. This isn't heroics. This is applied science by someone who understands Arctic environment at the molecular level. They reach the crash sea, 1:30 to find a situation worse than expected. 4 pilots, all alive but in various stages of hypothermia. The aircraft's heating system failed on impact. For 38 hours, they've been burning seat cushions and cargo materials to generate heat in an aircraft that's becoming a metal tomb. Captain Jennifer Martinez, aircraft commander. Who are you? Wolf begins immediate medical assessment. Robert Anderson, bush pilot. The Air Force sent me to bring you home. The pilots are in serious condition but alive. Stage 2 hypothermia, dehydration, minor injuries from the crash. Most critically, they're losing the psychological battle against despair that kills more Arctic survivors than cold. Wolf immediately begins warming procedures, using techniques developed during 20 years of Special Forces operations, emergency heating, medical stabilization, psychological reinforcement. Listen carefully, Wolf addresses all 4 pilots. You're going to survive this. I've conducted 847 rescues in conditions worse than this. But I need you to follow my instructions exactly. No questions, no hesitation. Understood. As Wolf stabilizes the pilots, he discovers a complication that changes everything. Captain Martinez has internal injuries from the crash that are worsening. Without immediate medical attention, she'll die within hours. Thompson watches Wolf work with growing amazement. This isn't a bush pilot providing first aid. This is a combat medic using battlefield medical techniques to save lives under impossible conditions. Sir, how do you know all this medical stuff? Wolf continues treating Martinez. Sergeant, Special Forces operators are trained in battlefield medicine because sometimes you're the only help available. Today, I'm the only help available. The medical situation forces a critical decision. Wolf can evacuate the pilots one at a time, making multiple flights. But Martinez needs immediate medical attention, and the weather is worsening. Change of plans, Wolf announces. We're taking everyone in one flight. Thompson does the math. Sir, that's 6 people in an aircraft designed for 4. Plus survival equipment. Plus we're taking off from an improvised airstrip in a blizzard. Sergeant, in Special Forces we had a saying, adapt, improvise, overcome. Today we're going to do all 3. Preparing the overloaded aircraft for takeoff in Arctic conditions requires modifications that Wolf performs with military precision. Redistributing weight, modifying control surfaces, calculating takeoff distances based on snow conditions and wind patterns. The 4 pilots help as they're able, amazed by Wolf's technical knowledge and calm leadership under impossible circumstances. This isn't reckless flying, this is applied physics by someone who understands exactly how much an aircraft can handle. Sir, Captain Martinez asks weakly, are you really just a bush pilot? Wolf helps her into the aircraft. Captain, right now I'm whatever you need me to be to get you home alive. The takeoff attempt violates every principle of safe aviation. 6 people in an aircraft designed for 4, taking off from rough terrain, in weather that grounds commercial aircraft, with fuel reserves calculated to the minute. Wolf's takeoff technique demonstrates why experience trumps technology. He uses wind patterns and terrain features to generate lift, employing techniques that aren't taught in flight schools because they're too dangerous for normal operations. The Cessna becomes airborne through a combination of skill, knowledge, and physics pushed to their absolute limits. Thompson watches Wolf pilot the overloaded aircraft through conditions that should be impossible, using instincts developed over decades of flying in Alaska. The return flight becomes a test of everything Wolf learned during 20 years of Special Forces operations. Navigation through zero visibility, medical care for injured passengers, aircraft control and turbulence that threatens to tear the plane apart. Captain Martinez's condition worsens during the flight, requiring Wolf to provide medical attention while piloting the aircraft. Thompson assists as directed, amazed by Wolf's ability to multitask under life-threatening pressure. Sir, how do you stay so calm? Wolf adjusts course to avoid a mountain peak visible only on his topographical knowledge. Sergeant, panic kills more people in survival situations than cold, injuries, or equipment failure. Stay calm, assess the situation, make decisions based on facts. The fuel situation becomes critical as they near Fairbanks. The overloaded aircraft burns fuel faster than calculated, and they're flying into headwinds that drain reserves further. Sir, are we going to make it? Wolf checks fuel gauges and calculates distance to the nearest airport. We're going to find out, Sergeant. But worrying about it won't change the outcome. With fuel running dangerously low, Wolf makes the decision to land at a small airstrip 30 miles short of Elmendorf Air Force Base. The strip isn't designed for emergency medical evacuations, but it's the only option available. Wolf radios ahead. Fairbanks emergency. This is Cessna 180 November 7 Alpha Wolf. I have 4 military personnel requiring immediate medical evacuation. Request ambulance and medical team. The landing is another demonstration of precision flying under pressure. Wolf puts the overloaded aircraft down on a short runway covered with snow, using every technique learned over decades of flying in impossible conditions. As medical teams rush Captain Martinez to an ambulance, Colonel Stone arrives by helicopter from Elmendorf. She approaches Wolf as he's shutting down the aircraft engine. "Mr. Anderson, I'm Colonel Stone. I need to know what happened out there." Wolf removes his Arctic gloves. "Colonel, 4 of your pilots were in trouble. I went and got them. End of story." "Sir, our rescue helicopters couldn't fly in those conditions. Our search aircraft couldn't find the crash site. How did you accomplish what an entire Air Force rescue operation couldn't?" Wolf looks at the ambulance carrying Captain Martinez. "Colonel, sometimes experience counts more than equipment. Your people have the best technology in the world. I have 40 years of flying in Alaska and 20 years of Special Forces training. Today, that combination worked." The rescue becomes national news. Civilian pilot saves 4 Air Force personnel in Arctic rescue. But the real story emerges when military investigators interview Wolf about his techniques and decision-making process. Major Kim conducts the official debrief. "Mr. Anderson, I need to understand how you navigated to the crash site when our GPS-guided aircraft couldn't locate it." "Major, I've been flying in Alaska for 40 years. I know every mountain, every valley, every weather pattern. Your pilots were using technology to find the aircraft. I was using knowledge to understand where it had to be." "Sir, what's the difference?" "Technology tells you what is. Knowledge tells you what will be. In rescue operations, you need both." The Air Force medical team provides the final assessment. All 4 pilots will make full recoveries. Captain Martinez required emergency surgery but will return to flight status. Without Wolf's intervention, all 4 would have died within 12 hours. Colonel Stone visits Wolf at his cabin a week later. "Mr. Anderson, the Air Force would like to offer you a consulting position. We need someone with your knowledge and experience to train our rescue operations." Wolf serves coffee in metal cups. "Colonel, I appreciate the offer, but I'm 66 years old and happy living in the woods." "Sir, you just proved that age and experience are assets, not liabilities. We need instructors who can teach what you know." Wolf considers the proposal. "What exactly are you asking me to do?" "Train our rescue personnel in Arctic survival and unconventional aviation techniques. Teach them how to succeed when technology fails." 3 months later, Wolf Anderson begins work as a civilian instructor at the Air Force Survival School. His first class consists of 20 young rescue specialists who think they know everything about survival and emergency operations. Wolf's teaching methods are unconventional but effective. Instead of classroom lectures, he takes students into the Alaskan wilderness and creates survival scenarios that test everything they think they know. "Gentlemen and ladies," Wolf addresses his first class. Modern military training emphasizes technology and equipment. "That's good, but it's not enough. Today you're going to learn what happens when your GPS fails, your radio doesn't work, and your survival depends on knowledge that can't be downloaded from a satellite." The students initially underestimate their 66-year-old instructor. That changes when Wolf demonstrates Arctic navigation techniques, survival skills, and decision-making processes that save lives when modern equipment fails. Captain Martinez, now fully recovered, visits one of Wolf's training exercises. "Students, I want you to meet the man who saved my life and the lives of 3 other pilots. When the Air Force's best technology couldn't reach us, Mr. Anderson flew through a blizzard in a 50-year-old airplane and brought us home." "Sir," one student asks, "what's the most important thing you can teach us?" Wolf considers the question. "That knowledge doesn't come from manuals or computers. It comes from experience, observation, and understanding that survival isn't about having the best equipment. It's about knowing how to use whatever you have." 2 years later, the Arctic Survival Program that Wolf developed has trained over 500 military personnel. The program's success rate in real-world rescue operations is unprecedented, with techniques Wolf developed being adopted by rescue services worldwide. Wolf still lives in his cabin in the woods, still flies his 1974 Cessna, and still maintains the survival caches and weather knowledge that make him Alaska's most effective search and rescue pilot. But now he's no longer overlooked. Military rescue coordinators from around the world visit his training programs. Aviation schools study his techniques. Most importantly, young rescue specialists learn that experience and knowledge are the most important tools in any survival situation. Agent Thompson, now promoted to Master Sergeant, stops by Wolf's cabin during a training exercise. "Sir, I wanted to thank you again. Not just for saving those pilots, but for teaching us that some knowledge can't be replaced by technology." Wolf checks weather conditions on his analog instruments. "Sergeant, the military has amazing technology. But technology works within parameters. Nature doesn't respect parameters. Sometimes you need people who understand how to work outside the rules." "Sir, what's the most important lesson you've learned?" Wolf looks out at the Alaskan wilderness that has been his home and workplace for 4 decades. That survival isn't about being the strongest or having the best equipment. It's about adapting to whatever situation you face and never giving up on the people who need your help. Every month, Wolf receives calls from military units facing impossible rescue situations. Desert operations where GPS fails, mountain rescues where helicopters can't reach, ocean emergencies where modern equipment isn't enough. Each time, the answer is the same: experience, knowledge, and the understanding that some missions require more than technology. They require wisdom earned through decades of facing impossible situations and finding ways to make them possible. Wolf Anderson, at 68 years old, remains Alaska's most effective search and rescue pilot. Not because he has the newest equipment or the fastest aircraft, but because he has something that can't be taught from a textbook: the knowledge of how to survive when survival should be impossible, and how to bring other people home alive when everyone else has given up. Because that's what Special Forces operators do. They adapt, they improvise, they overcome. And they never leave anyone behind, even when everyone thinks they're too old to matter.